Good evening and welcome to the special call City Council meeting on July 21st, 2022 of the Longview City Council. Tonight, our invocation and pledge will be led by Chloe Bates, who has volunteered for the past 5 years as part of the library's summer reading program. This year, the program had 1,570 participants. Chloe will be a senior at White Oak High School, where she is the drum major for the state championship band. She has volunteered with the library since 8th grade and loves any novel she can get her hands on. Please rise. Chloe, thank you.
Would you bow your heads with me today? Dear Lord, I pray that you bless us in this meeting and keep us. Lord, make your face shine on us and be gracious to us. I pray that we feel your presence during this meeting because you are with us wherever we go. I pray that this meeting focuses upon you and your plans for us. Amen.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chloe. Appreciate you very much. We're now to citizen comment. I do have some speaker cards. We will start with R. Mark Vinson.
Hello. I'm R. Mark Vinson of Henderson, Texas. I'm president and chair of Longview Pride. And I and the officers of Longview Pride, River Evers and Melissa Saber, would like to thank you for your help and representation provided by the City of Longview for Longview Pride Reboot 2022 on June 11th. Environmental Health, Leisha Kidd Brooks and council members Steve Pirtle, Kristen Ashara, Nona Snoddy for being present and representing the city, Nona Snoddy for reading the proclamation, Mayor Dr. Andy Mack for providing the proclamation, Leisha Kidd Brooks and staff of Environmental Health for helping with the food trucks. Also, would like to thank Leisha and Nona for helping with some electrical issues. Visit Longview, Texas, Tourist Information Center for working with us for tourist information on the website and for allowing us to tie the rainbow ribbons on the lamppost downtown. The staff of Longview Parks and Recreation for helping reserve Heritage Plaza. The Longview Police Department for being on top of an issue and providing extra patrol in the area. And a warm thank you from the LGBTQ+ community of Longview and East Texas for your hospitality. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jim Martin.
Well, first thing, I think we need a lower property tax.
Mr. Martin, would you please state your name and address, sir?
My name is Jim Martin. I live at 4305 Nadina in Spring Hill area.
Thank you, sir.
I think we need a lower property tax because we've got too much money to waste. I think the firemen and the police officers need a raise and get them new radios. And I think one thing needs to be done, as many employees for the city of Longview, they can find these chug holes that need to be fixed that's not being fixed. And the last thing I got to speak in, if we waste $12 million on giving to a company a third of what it's going to cost, put the mosquito-infested amphitheater in, it's some way we ought to impeach every one of you that votes for it. That's got to be the biggest joke. And if you loaned giving money out, I'll take $6 million and give you 10% back till I pay you back to put in about 4 businesses that will pay taxes in Longview, since you're not going to get anything out of the amphitheater. I think that's the worst thing we could ever do. Judge Stout thought it, so he's not giving a third of the money to build the amphitheater. And I don't understand. We got the Belcher Center, we got the convention center, we got the rodeo grounds. What do we need another pile of junk for that we got to take care of? That's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir. I have no more speaker cards. We will now go to public safety update. Chief Boone.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Mr. McPhee. First, I want to start off with congratulating Sergeant Brent Creasy on his promotion this week, July 18th, to the rank of sergeant. You can see there he's on the left side, he's got his family. On the right side, he's got his police family with him. We're very proud of him, and we know he'll do a good job. I want to move on to some stats for June. You'll see on our Priority 1 calls, we averaged 4 minutes and 22 seconds. Again, our standard is to be sub 5 minutes. That's from the time that the call comes in to the time that we actually have somebody at that residence or at that location. So we're very proud of that number. Calls for service for last month were 5,432. Traffic stops were about 2,000, and we had 20 DWI cases. Moving on to our text notification system, we sent out 7,141 notifications last month. On our survey side of that, on the back side of it, we had on the police officers, they had a 4.74 out of 5 rating, and our dispatch had a 4.65 out of 5 rating. So again, very pleased with those numbers. Also on July 9th, this is in response to, we all know of Uvalde and other mass shootings that have happened in our nation recently. One of my tactical officers was able to find this gentleman that actually invented this tool for door breaching, and it will basically get you inside almost any door there is. So he came to Longview, Texas. We had quite a few other agencies that came with us and participated in this training, and they spent the whole day figuring out different tactics to basically make it through any door system that there is. So again, we don't want anything to hold us back if there's ever an emergency in Longview, Texas. Also, our Teen Police Academy, it wrapped up last month, began on June 7th with their graduation on June 30th, and we had 24 teams that participated in that program, and we were very pleased with that and enjoyed the turnout. Our women's safety course, they'll also have a handgun portion at the end. We'll have that July 25th through July 28th. That one is actually filled, but we'll also have another one in September, and there's still a few slots available for that one, so please go online and check that out, and we'd love to see you sign up for it. And then we had some anniversaries that we're very proud of. Shelby Ferris there with 5 years. Ashley Timmons, one of our dispatchers, with 5 years of service. Bill Farmer with 20 years of service, one of our sergeants. Jose Montalvo, one of our school resource officers with 20 years of service. And then we have Eric Hewitt, one of our training recruiting officers with 30 years of service. Not pictured is Kathy Veith, one of our admin staff, and she had 5 years of service. With that, I always want to remind you, if you're looking for a career, not just a job, and you want to be a guardian of your community, come on down. We're accepting applications every day. That's all I have. Do y'all have any questions for me?
Any questions for Chief Boone? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chief Stillman.
Good evening, Mayor Mack, members of council, Mr. McPhee. Thanks for the opportunity to spend a few minutes with you, updating you on some activities of the fire department since our last meeting back in June. As you know, it's dry out there. It's hot and dry, and we have some of our firefighters, our wildland firefighters, deployed out to Central Texas to help control some of their wildfires. This fire actually happened back in June in Palo Pinto County. It was a several thousand acre fire. They were out there for about 2 weeks. They returned, and now they're back out there in Bosque County fighting pretty much the same fire. So the territory out there is just burning up. We're praying for rain. That's the only thing that's going to help resolve this. We're in pretty extreme fire conditions, not just out there, but it's starting to get really bad around here. So we encourage everybody to be extremely safe with any type of outdoor burning or any type of activity that they're doing, any cooking or anything outside. Just one little spark will get it going. Fire Station 5, an update on that. This was one of our bond projects. We have finally moved into the phase 1 side of Fire Station 5, and that has allowed facilitated the gutting and the rehab of the existing side of the building. So this is some great progress. We're happy to see this. Our crews were extremely excited to get into the new part finally after quite a while of construction activity. We hope that the second portion of this goes by pretty quick, and we'll be able to fully operate that fire station as was intended with the bond process. Here we go. We're constantly trying to bring on new members to keep our ranks filled. We had the opportunity to bring 5 new firefighters on board. They complete their orientation process tomorrow, and they'll be assigned to shift work after that. So Matthew Pittenger, Jacob Day, Logan Norris, Chris Kamak, and Adrian Perez, we want to welcome them to our department. We look forward to good things from them in the future. The tenure breakfast, we also had several employees hit important milestones in their career here at the City of Longview. There in the picture are Justin Royer, Chief Green, and Ramey Blaylock, all hitting certain 10 years, 25 years, and 15 years respectively. And then other employees that weren't able to be there that morning, driver William Perry, Captain David Harris, Kerry Fletcher, Josh Pettigrew, and Brad Brown. Congratulations to all these guys. It's always an exciting time when you hit those important milestones in your tenure here at the city. Fire safety, with school getting ready to start back up, we're getting really involved in daycares and things like that to send the message out about fire safety in the home. It'll get really busy as we roll in toward Fire Prevention Week, which happens in October. So anybody that's interested with a daycare or a school in sponsoring or scheduling something, please reach out to us. We organize those through our fire marshal's office. We're happy to come out and spread that word to keep people safe. Had the opportunity today to spend some time with a couple of local scouts from Troop 621. They're working on a merit badge for emergency preparedness, so we went up to the EOC. I can't think of a better environment to get them in to talk about emergency preparedness. And Parker and Hayden asked some excellent questions. I really enjoyed the conversations we had, and I think one of them might be interested in a career in emergency management later on down the road, so it was really fun, and we had a great time. It's hot out there, I don't have to tell you. Please make sure that you're paying attention to not only yourself, but any loved ones. If you're working outside doing any type of activity, the heat will zap you pretty quick. So make sure you're staying hydrated. And if you have any question that you might be having some type of heat-related emergency, don't hesitate to call 911 and get us involved in that. On a similar note, and this is kind of a sad slide, but Texas leads the country in child-related hot car deaths. So to my knowledge, knock on wood, we haven't had any, but I know we've had them here in our area, in our city before, but we want to encourage people to really pay attention because it just takes a few minutes of leaving a child unattended in a hot car before it becomes a fatal mistake. So please pay attention to those things. All right, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chief Stillman? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate you both. Council, we're now at a consent agenda. Any items council like pulled off for separate discussion?
I want to discuss item H.
Any other items off for separate discussion? Item H then, go ahead, Mr. Templeton. Mr. Carpenter?
Dwayne, what was the range of the bids?
They ranged from like 5.7 million to 5.3.
Okay, and what did we give up for the 553?
We moved the parking lot from concrete to asphalt. Now, we kept concrete for the rest of the building, but we did make that change. There was, the landscaping's probably the biggest number, where we said, okay, we'll just pull that landscape and we'll have our guys do that at a later date, so.
And that's within the budget number we needed from the bond?
Yes, with those changes that we made, got it down to where it was actually within budget. And then we had some savings from Station 5, so it'll offset that as well.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor.
If there's no other,
Move to approve.
we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion, and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We are now to zoning, public hearing to consider application PD 22-02. Ms. Choi.
Thank you, Mayor Mack, members of council, and Mr. McPhee. The applicant is requesting a rezone from plan development, which is PD 08-01, to plan development for a medical office. This site is located on the east side of Judson Road, south of Hill Street. In 2008, this property was rezoned from agriculture to plan development without a site plan approval. This was to allow for the property owner to better market this property and ensure that quality development occurs in appropriate locations. Within this plan development that was approved in 2008, the use of office was allowed. And as each tract develops, the developer must come back to the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council for final site plan approval, which is what the applicant is doing today. So the applicant is proposing to construct a medical office building for Longview Orthopedic, which is currently located on East Hawkins Parkway. The building is approximately 33,000 square feet with a possible future expansion. The height of the building has been restricted to a maximum 2 stories within 100 feet of the shared property lines between them and Hill Street. The applicant is also proposing a minimum 20-foot buffer with an 8-foot solid wood or masonry fence erected along the property lines directly to the north, adjacent to the residential. The City of Longview MPO, which is our Metropolitan Planning Organization, the Thoroughfare Plan, designates or identifies a future extension of Spring Hill Road in this area. The applicant is planning to preserve approximately 30 feet along the southern portion of this property for the future expansion and extension of this roadway. Judson Road is classified as a principal arterial roadway, and this type of development is appropriate along this roadway as long as access management is followed. Planning and Zoning Commission, along with staff, recommends approval of this request. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
This does require a public hearing, which is now open. Any question, Ms. Choi?
Is the Spring Hill extension going to go beside that property?
It would go to the south, so Spring Hill would.
And then it
Yeah.
continues out?
Yes, sir. That's what the MPO plan
Thank you.
shows. Mhm.
Any other questions, Ms. Choi? Public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Have public hearing held to consider application S22-06. Ms. Choi.
Thank you. The applicant is requesting a specific use permit to allow for the construction of a one-family or single-family dwelling in heavy commercial zoning district. Staff does find that the proposed zoning change is consistent with the future land use map and surrounding uses. Planning and Zoning Commission, along with staff, recommends approval of this request. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
This also requires a public hearing, which is now open. Any questions of Ms. Choi? Public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion, and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Public hearing held to consider application S22-07. Ms. Choi.
Thank you. The applicant is also requesting a specific use permit to allow for the construction of a single-family dwelling in commercial zoning district. Staff finds the proposed zoning change is consistent with the future land use map and surrounding uses. Planning and Zoning Commission, along with staff, recommends approval of this request. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
This also requires a public hearing, which is now open. Any questions of Ms. Choi? Public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion, and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing now to consider application Z22-17. Ms. Choi.
Thank you. The applicant is requesting a rezone of property located at the northwest corner of Hollybrook Drive and Ridgewood Drive from single-family 4 to townhome zoning district. The applicant would like to develop a neighborhood of townhomes with approximately 30 townhomes. Ridgewood is classified as a local roadway. Hollybrook is classified as a minor arterial roadway. Both roadways, this type of development is appropriate along both roadways. Staff finds that the proposed zoning change is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Planning and Zoning Commission, along with staff, recommends approval of this request. I'd be happy to answer your questions at this time.
Any question? And this requires a public hearing. Is now open. Any question of Ms. Choi? Public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion, and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Choi. We have an action item, consider a resolution authorizing city manager to negotiate a contract with Freeze and Nichols. Mr. Shirley.
Thank you, Mayor Mack, members of council, Mr. McPhee. We're asking for consideration of a resolution that would authorize city manager or designee to negotiate and execute an agreement with Freese and Nichols in the amount not to exceed $94,200 for the update of the City of Longview Comprehensive Plan. As you may remember, this is a plan that was adopted in 2015. Since that time, the city has been very aggressive in the implementation of that plan through budgeting and bond projects and just general implementation throughout our departments. As such, many of those top 27 action items have been completed or are in motion. As such, we need to take a look at updating that. Those updates would include the vision and goals, the future land use plan, as well as the neighborhood and community livability, and then obviously the implementation portion. So it's not a whole rewrite, it would just be an update. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any question, Mr. Shirley, on this?
A laundry list, go ahead.
Are we mandated to have to do this?
To update it?
Yes.
No, sir.
Most of the questions that I would ask, you've already answered a lot of them, and staff already knows. So I'm asked to spend $94,000 on something that staff should already have the answers for. And you should be able to tell us that or put it in a report for us. So I'm having a hard time, giving away $94,000 that I think could be spent better places. If I come in and ask you a question in there now, you've got an answer for me, and you can tell me what it's up to the comprehensive plan, what it's up to the future land use map, and all that stuff that goes with it. So all we're
The involvement, so that way we can see what their new goals and desires are, so that we can take that, especially with new census numbers and new data that's coming out from the census, we can take all of that with that community input and determine, are we on the right path, or do we need to shift paths, and really look at, it's really more about getting priority projects as well. Now, as far as general concepts, general planning concepts and things like that, yes, that's something that you can go to staff that we can regurgitate from, best practices. But in terms of, what our community needs and desires are, that's really the process that we get that information and feedback from our community.
Mr. Shirley, would there be a way to do this, sorry.
Council, please let me recognize you because Mr. Carpenter was next. So just a second. Are you through, Mr. Pirtle?
Well, how would you get community input? You would do the same thing you would do without this group, right? You would post it, call them in, have people come in, basically like we did it when we did it the first time on the comprehensive plan. All they're doing is gathering data for us that you give them and that the citizens come in and give them, and it's going to cost the citizens $94,000. And I don't see a need for that at this time. If staff is more than able to update everything we need to be done here, and I can't see spending this kind of money on something that you and your staff already know, or that we come in and ask questions, and you're basing a lot of this on what may happen in the future. Well, we don't know that, and maybe 5 years down the line, we may have to find out then. I think we're kind of spinning our wheels here myself.
Sure, and staff certainly does have a lot of expertise in urban planning, and really where the consultant comes into play to help us with that is they have expertise in community engagement and really drawing that information out, and then they have the time to actually put that together in a report and put an implementation plan together, where staff really doesn't have the time to do the long-range planning. Many cities have full departments that are strictly for long-range planning. And that's really the benefit of a third party coming in and helping with that.
So what do you foresee on our long-range planning?
In terms of what the outcomes would be?
Zoning?
So,
Future
well,
land use
and
map?
that's where we would look at the future land use map to see, are there things in areas that necessitate change in consideration on our thoughts for future land use? That's going to be what we use to make zoning decisions.
Well, but I would figure that you and your staff would know more about that than an outside firm, because they're going to have to
Sure.
get that information from
And
you.
and part of that process would be visiting with
within the city, the advancements within the city manager's office, the advancements within your departments. I see no reason that we couldn't take the existing comprehensive plan and identify the issues that need attention. As far as the public inputs, let me recall that you and I had a discussion about this. When they asked the questions at Maud Cobb that night, one of the reasons the 2015 is skewed so heavily towards sidewalks and several of the other things that our constituents wanted was because they never asked a question, but what if it cost? Everybody in this room wants sidewalks on both sides of the road, but not everybody in this room is willing to pay an additional $4,000 to $5,000 per lot to have the beauty of sidewalks. So I have had an issue with the way that Freese and Nichols brings those questions back as far as sidewalks, parks, all of those things. The questions are good, but the citizens are not being explained that if you give up a park in a subdivision, that pushes the lot price up. And so I would be more in favor of us taking that existing plan with the Assistant City Manager's office, your staff, and then coming back to see what we identify. And then I would further be in plan, Mayor, that that we be able to incorporate that into all of our town hall meetings, which I did in my first town hall meeting. And so we got the input, because I think everybody on this, with the exception of the mayor, will be having town halls in the next 2, 3, 4 months. So I'm not in favor at this time. Thank you.
Ms. Gamboa.
I would kind of like to echo the same. I would like to see if there's a way to do this in-house first to save the taxpayers that money. And I don't know if there's something keeping us to using Freeze and Nichols, or if we could take some bids for community input. I just think $94,000 is a lot of money for community input, when we could, maybe send a couple mailers out that might be less than that, or even like implementing that in our town halls, or opening up the Mod Cobb or other places where people can go and submit their input, and maybe put like a call to action for our neighbors, the taxpayers, to give us their input. That doesn't cost $94,000. I think in an economy with 9.1% inflation, that's just a lot of money to spend right now.
Ms. Snoddy.
Good evening, everyone. Michael, how often would they have to come and do an update? Is this something that they would have to come back until the comprehension plan is finished? Or are we looking at expending this type of money every 5 years,
Sure, and it's really based on the community, Communities are required to have a comprehensive plan. They're not required to update it. So if you want to use that comprehensive plan as your guiding document, which we have, we've had the great opportunity to do that. But we're at a point now where a lot of the actionable items we've got underway. So as far as being able to look at what the community's actionable items are, we don't have that list. And so that's where we come to that crossroad to determine, okay, what do we do? Is it time to update that comprehensive plan? Back in October, I believe it was, our comprehensive plan advisory committee met, and we kind of went through the comprehensive plan and where we were with the implementation. And it was really from that meeting that it came out that we really needed to look at doing an update or a refresh to that. Now, granted, we're not doing a whole new plan. It's just strictly an update, refreshing those, taking the information that we've gotten from the census, because remember, we've got new census data, applying that and seeing if there's been any changes in our community that need to, realign with our direction, and then also looking to see what our community members desire.
I do want to make a comment.
Thank
you. I'm the chair of the Comprehensive Plan Committee, and of course, we started planning for the one that was adopted probably 4 years before that. So it is dated at this time. And I think it is our crucial role up here to set the vision for Longview, which includes hearing from our citizens what they want. And the way that we do that is through those community meetings. I mean, congratulations to, I suppose, those of us making those decisions that 27 of the things on our top 100 list have been checked off. So we're at a point where we do need to regroup and look at what are our next priorities. It is not sufficient in my mind to use town halls where people come and talk about potholes and their day-to-day issues. We're really asking the community for, what do you want to see? Last time the answer was sidewalks, trails, a new police department, remodel several fire departments, but everything that came from our $104 million bond package came from this comprehensive plan. That's how we knew what to do. It was not a, what do us seven want to spend $104 billion on? It came from the community, and that's what we based it on. And I think that's very, very important. And it's also worth $94,000 to get the community input, match it up with the expertise of our city staff, which is amazing, but it's just unbelievably important that we use those two tools that we have. I do think we are a little handcuffed with Freeze and Nichols because it's a refresh and we actually are paying less than we would if it was a totally new study. Michael can probably answer that better. I'm certainly not opposed to getting additional bids. I am opposed to asking city staff to do it who already have 100% of their jobs full with what they do. So I obviously very strongly feel that this is important. We came to the point with the Comprehensive Advisory Committee that we were so far down the list, again, way to go Longview, that we've done those things, but it is time to regroup. And the longer we sit without having those things identified, we are not moving our community forward. I feel very strongly we are not doing our job.
Mr. Wade.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
When was the first one done? What year?
15.
We
Well-
approved it in 15.
Yeah, this one was in 2015.
In 2015?
And before that, it had been a number of years since we had a complete refresh.
So you don't remember how many years before that?
I don't remember. We had updated bits and pieces. We'd updated future land use map. We had updated Parks Master Plan. But as far as a true comprehensive plan community vision, it had been, I think, 20-plus years.
Sure. Michael, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
With when you had the committee that met, the discussion that took place, who was present in that meeting? I mean, what were there, obviously city staff, Kristen's in charge of it, right? And who else was there? Were there, we used to have two members from each district that met with that group to represent each district equally. Were those the people that were present at the meeting?
Yes,
Yes.
we changed to just one.
To one, yeah. There's
one
one
each.
from each district now.
Okay. We just want from each district?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Would it be out of the question to, because a lot of us have been through this since 2015, but we don't really remember all the things that go on because we've done a lot, we have a lot to do, but a lot of things that we have left to do may not be relevant any longer. So of the list that we had, can we get a refreshed list of what was on the comprehensive plan, the original one, what we have either done or implemented thus far and what's left, so that we could at least look at that before we, at least from my opinion, to make a decision on if I want to hire someone. I think we need guidance on this. I don't think if this was something city staff would do, we wouldn't have had to have someone in the first place. I think we're going to have some guidance on this for sure. Whether it's Freese and Nichols or some other company, that'll be for you all to determine to bring back to us, in my opinion. I would like to see a list, very simple. Please don't bombard me with 30 pages of notes. List of the projects, checked off if they've either been done, implemented, or considered, or no longer relevant. Scratch through it. Let's see where we are. Then we can reconvene and decide what really the next step is where we need to go forward. Because we must go forward with the comprehensive plan or with some, whatever term you want to use for that. I call it progress. That's progress. And we have to have a blueprint for how we're going to move forward to progress the city to where the citizens want to be and where we want them to be. So is that out of the question, or can we do that?
No, we can do that. And actually, that's what we did with the committee, so we can pull those notes and send it to y'all.
If council has another option, please feel free to say so. But if not, I would say we would table this until we reconvene with you and have some more information that we can make more concrete decision with. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
One other question. Michael, is every district represented on this advisory committee? Is
Yes,
there at least?
each
Okay.
district has one
Okay.
member.
Because we may want to redirect how we're doing that too. We need to see where we are and what we have left on there, because it may be ultra heavy in one side or ultra light in another side. And we really should look at that before we have someone else come in, because no one knows Longview better than we and the citizens know Longview. But let us have our input first and see where we go from there. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Is council okay with this? Then is there a motion to table?
I'll make a motion to table it.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Now consider a resolution authorizing city manager to negotiate a developer participation with Garrett Boersma and Jeff Croyer. Mr. Shirley.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a resolution authorizing city manager or city manager's designee to negotiate and/or execute a developer participation agreement with Garrett Boersma and Jeff Croyer for the construction and realignment of Delia Drive at the intersection of Page Road and Loop 281. Many of you may be aware of this intersection. I think over the last number of years, TxDOT has made some improvements to the signal that have maybe not made improvements to the intersection. And then certainly through the development of the Hallsville ISD West Elementary, the traffic issues really came into focus at this intersection during that process. They submitted a traffic impact analysis that really showcased that this intersection was going to become a problem. During that process, Hallsville unfortunately decided that they did not want to fund that realignment, and so they kind of passed that burden on to the city of Longview. what we're asking is we're in a unique position because the property that is, and I'll scroll to that map real quick. The property there with that red line on it, there's a 5-acre tract there. That property is for sale and under contract for development. And when the developers came to visit with the city about their project to do townhouses on it, that's when we discussed with them about the city's desire to realign Delia Road, and we started talking with them because this is really, if it's going to develop, we need to have those conversations now. Thankfully, those developers have worked with us really the last 10, 11 months to look at that and see how feasible it would be to put a project together. We've gotten appraisals and had to wait on those sort of things. But what we're here to ask for is permission for a developer participation agreement where the developers would fund the construction of the realignment of Delia Road. As you can see here, it would put it in line with the driveway for the bus traffic for the West Elementary, and then abandon the existing section there. We kind of create a new Loop 281 frontage. They would fund 100% of the construction, and then at the completion of that construction, the city would pay them back for those costs. The cost for construction of that, it's $785,531 is the construction cost. That's that includes contingency and engineering. And then there's some additional development cost, the right-of-way acquisition that factors in damages to the property on how they can develop it. Holding costs are to be determined, but there's going to be a cost for that. And then obviously there's some cost for the financial risk for the developers because they have to go out and borrow the money. They have to they have to personally guarantee that money, and that's money that they can't borrow for another project for the term of the loan. And so what we would do is enter into a contract where they would pay for it, and then we would negotiate over a 3-year term where we would make an initial payment when it's completed and we take ownership of it, and then we would make 2 additional payments down the road. And so right now the project total is about $1,029,892. That does not include any of the holding costs. That would be just actual whatever the rate that they can get would be. And then if for some reason construction costs were above that number, then we would be back here talking to y'all. Hopefully they would be able to get it below that. Because this project is not listed on our thoroughfare plan, and you heard Angela talking about the Spring Hill extension, that project was on the thoroughfare plan, so we can require preservation of that right-of-way. Because this project is not listed, we cannot. And so we're kind of at the mercy of the developers there. And fortunately, they've been willing to walk and talk with us about this project until now, and they do have it under contract and planning to develop it either way.
Any questions, Mr. Shirley, on this?
I do want to make a comment. I'm really excited about this as an option. This was maybe one of the very first issues that was brought up to me when I got on council almost 9 years ago, that this intersection, even before the existence of the new Hallsville Elementary School going right there, was a problem of alignment. And I don't remember what it would have cost us to come in and fix it ourselves, but it was many times what we're considering today. So I think it's very timely, and I think that it will solve an issue of traffic and alignment that has been there for a very long time and frustrated lots of people in my district, and will make it safer, especially considering the additional traffic right there. So I'm very excited about it. Very grateful to the developers for being willing to work with us to make that happen where everybody wins. But I'm very much in support of what we are proposing.
Yeah, that's a safety nightmare right there. It always has been. I've driven that intersection 1,000,000 times in my life, but it's always been it's one of those ones that, now would y'all go fix Eastman Road and where Tryon and Eastman and Alpine Tryon, all that stuff comes together next for us, please? Because that's our other 5-way intersection we need to get rid of. But yeah, we tried that one too. But I appreciate them, you guys, for being willing to help us out, because this is really something that's needed to be done for many, many, many years. So thank you very much. Council, any other questions?
Where does the funding
I'll field that. We would have to come back. There's not funding budgeted in this or the proposed documents that I'm about to go over with you. So we would have to come back at the time that the construction completion was with the dollar amount and do a budget amendment at that time.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
If there's no other questions, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Now the budget presentation, fiscal year budget 2022-2023. Mr. McPhee.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. It's an honor to be before you tonight to present the proposed budget for FY 22-23. We'll start by giving you a brief outline of what I'm going to discuss. This PowerPoint should be in the documents that you have in your budget book. We'll talk a little bit about this year and how it's gone. We'll talk a little bit about the FY 22 and 23 council budget priorities. Then we'll review some of the proposed budget goals for this year's budgets. And then I want to talk a little bit specifically about one-time revenues and one-time expenses. Then I want to discuss some recurring increases that are a part of this proposed budget. I want to review the revenue sources, and then we'll talk a little bit about the reserve fund balance and the budget calendar moving forward. So this year, current year, everyone knows we've had an extremely low unemployment rate. What that has done is obviously created a wage growth issue in our communities. Lots of people having trouble finding people to fill vacancies. That has been a problem. And municipalities that budget on an annual basis are the last to react. Inflationary pressures, every one of you, each in your own business and in your own family role, know that we've had costs that have increased upon each of us. We also have increased fuel costs, and supply chain woes still hamper our production as well as our service and efficiency within the city. The local economy has recovered from the initial COVID impact, but I want to temper that optimism by stating our sales tax revenues are really back to where they were in 2019. And I think that's something that we just need to keep in mind. And unfortunately, this is kind of a double-edged sword for us all. The large number of vacancies is exactly how we've assisted in absorbing these inflationary budgets during this particular year. So earlier, I think it was in March, Mary Ann and I both met with most of you, or at least received correspondence from you on what your budget priorities are. And I've outlined a few of these that I want to review. Prioritize police and fire. That was a resounding message. I will tell you that this budget before you tonight that I'm proposing addresses that priority. Providing competitive pay. I will say this budget that I'm about to present addresses or begins to address that very issue. I also heard from some of you that there was need for increased road maintenance. I will tell you that that increase is in this proposed budget as well. There was a desire to have increased litter pickup within our community. That is within this budget. There was also a request to increase the abandoned structure demolition throughout our community. That is a part of this proposed budget. And there was also an initiative expressed about providing customer service training. That is also in this budget. We'll talk a little bit about some of the budget goals that we set that we thought we needed to accomplish during this fiscal year. First and foremost, we need to not only recruit, but we need to retain the exemplary workforce that we have. We also need to learn to absorb inflation while maintaining that high level of service. And maintaining that high level of service means absorbing that inflation within the budget, not because of our vacancies. So we are building capacity to absorb those future budgets' annual maintenance and operation needs, because we need to be able to sustain the activities that we're funding on an annual basis. I'll speak to this a little bit more as we get further into the detail, but we need to use our municipal resources efficiently, and sometimes we don't always do that. This budget, I'll highlight an area where we did that. We need to restore the recurring funding for the Drainage Capital Improvements Program. We've used one-time revenues to fund that in recent years, and the drainage issues don't go away. They need to be addressed. The last thing that we want to make is always a priority is we need to make sure we minimize the financial burden on those residents that we all work for. The general fund overview for the budget that you'll see before you, we had budgeted revenues, and I use that word intentionally, budgeted revenues this year of $78.8 million, and budgeted expenditures this year of $79.9 million. So you can see this current fiscal year, we were already set to outpace our revenues that were projected. We'll talk a little bit about what our actual revenues for this fiscal year are in another slide. The proposed budget for next year is an $89.8 million budget, and it is a balanced budget in revenues and expenditures. The one-time revenues that we've discussed or we referred to as the ARPA funds, I want to talk about the current balance of the received funds that are within the city are $9.5 million. I am recommending that we allocate $4.8 million of that money in this year's one-time revenues and our revenue totals. I think a lot of us are uncertain about what the economy holds for the future, and I think this is very, very conservative fiscal planning, leaving that additional flexibility for the FY24 year when nobody's really quite sure where we'll be during that time. So when we talk about one-time revenues, the reason I want to break those out and speak about them specifically is because the one-time revenues really need to fund those one-time expenditures and not recurring expenditures. Because if you start funding recurring expenditures with one-time revenues, you're going to wind up having to cut something you're doing, and you're not going to be able to maintain your level of service. So our one-time revenues this year, the first thing, there's a new fire engine that's in that budget. If you'll remember last year during the budgeting process, there was a fire engine that was leased. This is an outright purchase, so that means it's not a recurring cost. Public safety radios, I have talked with both the police chief and the fire chief. They identified an issue with our current radio system. I asked for them to prepare a plan on what would consistently provide them to meet their prima facie mission, and they developed a plan. This amount of funding funds year one of their plans, $936,000. The next thing was an identified issue was the police vehicle cameras. They are in need of replacement. There's some technology upgrades that are necessary. That's $240,000, and it takes care of that need. The fire department bunker gear, this was another priority within the fire department. This is phase 2 of the 3-year plan of that bunker gear replacement, or addition, excuse me. There's also a warranted traffic signal that's necessary at McCran Road and Magnolia Lane. This is a one-time purchase of $350,000. There's a section of our Kids View playground at Lear Park that is in disrepair. It's been in service for quite some time. There's $100,000 of one-time replacement of that section within this budget proposal. And other one-time purchases less than $100,000 that total $743,000. There's a list of those in your budget book. They're spread among all the divisions within the city. And that leaves a balance of $986,000 of this one-time revenue that I'll point out we are still using to subsidize the maintenance and operations rate. And so I think that's just mindful. It's a better position than we were in last year during the budget presentation, but we really need to build that in our M&O. So the recurring increases, and these are the main differences between the budgets that we've done in the past years and the summary of new things that we're doing in this proposed budget proposal. The public safety investment of $2.2 million, which I'll go into a little bit further detail. We're doing across-the-board salary increases for $1.8 million, and we're doing that in a little different manner than we've done that in the past. Our response to inflation, if you look at our supplies categories as well as our contractual services, they have been hit with the same inflationary pressures that we have and each of you have, and those cost increases total the $2.5 million there. And then the voters approved the fire pension bond issuance, and that recurring cost, additional cost, is a $1.9 million. So you can see that there are $8.4 million of recurring increases that are within the budget proposal before you. We'll detail a little bit of the public safety investment. I think it's really important to note that I'm surprisingly happy that we are able to address both police and fire compensation to match the city of Tyler's. This was something that was last done in 2015 and 2017, and there was a reason in past times that they split it up over a 2-year period, was to make sure they built the capacity within their operational budget. We're also implementing a signing incentive for both police officers and firefighters. And obviously, we have a need in both of those areas. The chiefs get up here and speak about it every meeting. That is part of this budget proposal. We also have a plan to upgrade to state-of-the-art cardiac equipment on all our fire apparatus. That's funded in this proposal. We are staffing an additional 6-person medic crew. And we are recruiting 2 civilian records specialists, and this is that going to municipal resources efficiently. We're adding record specialists so we can get the officers back focused on their primary mission that's currently being performed by police officers. Then I want to talk about the across-the-board salary increases. So once we bring the police and fire up to City of Tyler, we are implementing an across-the-board 4% pay increase plus a flat salary adjustment of $500. Now, the thing I want to talk about this is an equitable raise. Everybody gets the same percentage and flat adjustment, but it does address those that are disproportionately affected by the price increases in a better manner, which those are our lower paid workers. The impact to the general fund for the general government is $770,000, and the other portion is 1.06 that is related to our public safety. Now that we've gotten through the recurring increases, I want to talk, there's been some changes in truth in taxation legislations that have changed the way we set municipal tax rates and also changed the revenue in which we receive. I'd like to talk about in FY 22-23, our initial property values are projected to increase by $800 million, and that is about an 11% increase. Before the truth in taxation legislation, the city would have received about $6.4 million in additional revenue. With the legislation currently as it is, and in your budget books, you will see that we are going to receive an additional $2.4 million in post-legislation property tax revenue increase. So the property tax rate proposal and the information that the books are based on is a 57.89 tax rate, which includes the 2-cent increase approved by the voters in 2022 fire pension bond election. So if you take a quick look at this chart, you will notice that in 2020 and 2023, those are the only times that the overall tax rate has increased, and both of those are a result of a voter-approved bond election. Our total property tax rate, as I just mentioned for the proposal, is 57.89. The no new revenue rate and the voter approval rate, we should have those rates, which come from the Gregg County tax assessor. We should have those rates within 2 weeks. The final appraisal values are due from the appraisal district pending their contesting or the final valuations. That number is due next week, and then I believe the tax assessor's office has 7 to 10 days to finalize the final numbers for us. So when I talked a little bit about our optimism about sales tax revenue, I'm going to temper that optimism even a bit further. If you look at the FY 21 and 22 numbers, they're significantly better than the 1920 and the 2021 numbers for most of the year. But you can see in the last couple of months, the increases have been less significant and less significant. And that's, again, why we talked about the fiscal uncertainty in the future, that is the point I'm trying to point out there. So again, this is the general fund revenues. You can see the one thing I want to draw attention to, everybody, we're evenly split about a third, and a third between fees and fines, property tax revenue, and sales tax. But an interesting thing occurred this year with the changes in the legislation. We are now more dependent on sales tax, which is a volatile source of recurring revenue, than property tax. And the other thing, we are extremely thankful that GAP is coming online, because that's part of the reason that we're right side in that. The general fund expenditures, this is the same tale that's told nearly every year. We have about a third of our our expenditures for the police department, a third of the expenditures in the fire department, and a third in everyone else's expenditures. I will note one difference, because everybody looks at this, and police and fire are very competitive, and I learned that and continue to learn that. The big difference between police and fire is the $1.2 million, and that's really that engine purchase. Their equipment is expensive. Interesting thing about the FY23 general fund reserve balance, this goes back to our revenues this year were greater than we anticipated. And so you see there's a large jump in our general fund reserve balance. And that reserve fund balance is because the sales tax projections came in much higher than were anticipated. And the reserve fund balance, we did not come back and ask council to use those funds. We lived within our means. And so that's why you see the jump from 2022 to 2023, where we'll end up with a 26.1% fund balance. Another interesting note I will make is that we are not planning to use any of that money in our current fund budget. Lastly, the total of all funds from FY21-22 is $197 million, and for FY22-23 is $206 million. That's roughly the $9 million increase that we've spent the majority of time talking about. I would also like to note, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it because this is the cutting to the chase, there's no water rate increase, there is no sewer rate increase, and there is no sanitation rate increase that is a part of this budget proposal. The budget calendar that remains is Thursday, August 11th. We're going to have a budget discussion, a fee changes discussion, which those are also within the book that you've been provided. And then we'll have a preliminary vote on the tax rate. We have a follow-up meeting on August 25th to adopt the annual fee resolution. We have another public hearing on the budget, hopefully adopt the budget. And then we'll have a separate vote to ratify the rate, have a public hearing on the tax rate, and adopt the tax rate. September 8th, LEEDCO is planning to present their budget for your approval. I want to acknowledge first the efforts of not only the directors but the number of managers within the city is about 50. Many of those managers prepare 2 and 3 budgets apiece. And I want to tell you that every one of those managers met with the city manager's office and went over those budgets for a period of about 2 weeks. And the staff time that they put in to making this budget, those are the people that made it possible for me to present this to you tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions and look forward to discussions on this in the future.
Any questions, Mr. McPhee, on this? Please raise your hand, counsel, so I can acknowledge you. Ms. Snoddy.
Hi, Roland. I do have one question or comment. I didn't see anything or don't see anything in the budget about professional development or what we're going to do to move forward on some of the things we talked about as far as diversifying upper management. We had talked about some training, some things of that nature.
Yes, ma'am. If you will look in the city manager's budget, there is a line item that talks about a program that we're starting with your approval, obviously, but it's a servant leadership, and that's some training that we want to implement citywide.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Shahara?
I do. Thank you. I can tell that you guys worked really hard to fit in a lot of the things that everybody talked about and identified as issues, so thank you. The only question I had as we went through was that I wanted to ask, so about the fire pay increases, of course, since Tyler doesn't provide EMS, we talk about that maybe not being the right place to compare to. So if we could get a comparison, I know raising to Tyler and then doing the adjustment, could we look at that adjustment and then a comparable city or a couple of cities? I know we've identified those in the past as to who they are. I don't remember offhand. But would that be something we could look at?
We can look at that. I'll tell you this, the one thing that there's a little bit difference, and so I'm going to say I think the firefighting, you might could say that those things are equal, but then maybe we need to take a closer look at the paramedic pay, because that's the piece of it that's a little bit different. We actually have a paramedic pay right now, and that may not be the right compensation number, but we'd be happy to look at both of those things. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Gamboa?
I just have a question in regards to the public safety investment under the staff and additional 6-person medic crew. Would one of those be a frontline medic in my district, or did that make the budget this time around?
I believe that is with the plan right now is 6, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
It's 6 total people, 2 per day, and the idea is to staff an additional ambulance in Northwest Long.
Okay. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate your hard work. I know you guys been working hard all week, and we greatly appreciate it.
Mr. Purtle?
On your fire and police pay, can you detail that a little bit more to the council as it is now? And also, we can compare to any town we want to, really.
Yes, sir.
I'm just comparing to one, we compare to the Metroplex, we're not even going to be close. You know that. They're
Yes,
paying
sir.
$15,000 to $20,000
You're
more
right.
up there.
Yes, sir.
And if we want to go that route, or if we want to go to someone like Marshall or something like that, we'll go down. So Tyler is as close as we can get to what we've got population-wise, graphic, the economics and everything else that we have around here. So that's why I have not gone to those other areas when I requested Tyler on this sheet here. Now, we can play with that all day long. We do it with everything we come up with. We compare to this town, that town. It's whatever's benefit for whoever's wanting the money. And we've had that many times up here. But if you can detail to me the fire setup that you've got and the police setup you've got, what are we comparing this with right now?
We'll get you the new
Well, no,
tables.
I've already kind of been told.
Okay.
Are we comparing this to Tyler?
Yes, sir.
So my firemen and women, our firemen and women, are being compared to Tyler's rate, because I've got it right here. We're being compared to their salaries, and we're being bumped up to that salary at this point, right?
Yes, sir.
That's what you're bumping us up to. Because I've got a spreadsheet that I did on this for every position we've got of all 310 positions. I've got the fire and the police. And oddly enough, to raise these positions up 1 year at a time, for this year, for sure, it's less than $500,000. Now, I know this is a non-recurring deal. I understand that, but we're still losing firemen and policemen. So my deal is you're raising them up right now, the fire department and the police department, with these figures, with what is equal to Tyler right now, right?
Yes, that's the first.
Okay.
That's the first part of
Then
the move. Yes, sir.
The 4% that we're putting on there is up and above that parity pay.
Yes, sir.
And then the $500 is on top of that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that takes care of those two public safety issues. Now, why did we come in and ask every department to cut their budget 2%?
So that I can present the budget that I have before you.
I know, but
That's-
where did, I guess I should ask this question first. What is the rate that the fire department grew last year from this year? 1%, 5%, 6%?
I don't have those numbers in front of me,
Did
but
their
I can.
budget go from 24 million to 28 million? So that's probably 4%. So then we're going to knock them back down 2%. So they're actually going to go back into last year's rate of what they get to spend.
Some of those requested cuts were restored, so I could get some of that detailed with you. I just don't have it prepared right now.
But I just wanted to make sure that
Sure.
that 4% that we're putting back in there, and for the rest of the employees of the city of Longview, was coming out of that 2% that we asked them to cut that budget down, right?
You can say that
I mean,
money
you
came
can
from
swap
there.
money
I mean,
around
sure.
all day long. Every how you wanna do it,
You can
swap
identify
it
that
around.
however
I
you'd
understand
want.
that.
Yes, sir.
But that's that's on top, that 4% is on top of that parity raise for those two public safety.
Yes, sir, and we will get the new tables to council so that you guys can see those
Okay.
things
Now,
that
do
are
we
in
go
this
back to,
budget.
do we compare it to Tyler? Do we compare it to Plano? Do we compare it to Carthage? It depends on where you want to go. I picked Tyler because, like I say, it's close. It's there. We seem to, go shopping back and forth from sales and everything else, from Tyler to Longview or whatever. So that was the easiest thing to do. And Mrs. Shahar, we can go all over the state and find exactly what we want, but that's the closest thing we needed to do, and that's what everybody can, when we do the housing market, that's the way it is. It's cheaper to live here than it is in Tyler. Why? Because things cost more over there. I know a lot of the builders over there. Things cost more in Dallas. I can tell you houses in Dallas that we build here for a third or half of that, what they cost in Dallas. It depends on where you're at, what the property tax is, what the makeup of the people are. I mean, we're blue-collar people supposedly over here, the way they classify us. Tyler's supposed to be white-collar. I don't know the difference. I know a lot of people over there. But, I mean, we can spend all the time, if we want to, comparing to this town and to that town. But I picked a close one. I picked one that everybody knew, and I picked one that we compete with daily, I'm assuming, on a lot of these positions, or some of these positions. So that's why I wanted to clarify Tyler when I asked for these requests versus anybody else. If I was going to go with anybody else, I would have gone with somebody higher, and that would have just muddled the water, because by doing that, we'd had to say, well, we've got to come down from the $15,000 more they pay for each position in Plano than they do in Longview. So we'd have to work ourselves down. So I got to the closest base I could get.
I'm not arguing with you. I think it's great we give them a pay raise. I think we should acknowledge that they do a job that Tyler doesn't. So Ron's suggestion makes a lot of sense.
And I know that.
Yeah.
Our firemen, and they do double duty. They're paramedics and they're firemen at the same time. We can't pay them enough money. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. You're right.
Because unless you've been on that end, you can't pay them enough money to take care of you at that time. So I have no problem with that, but that's the reason I used Tyler to start with. And I am glad that staff did that request from me, because it was very, very important for me to get that, because we're still losing people right now.
Sure.
And we're trying to keep them. I mean, they're doing every incentive they can to do all that stuff, and I want it to stay there. And that brings up another one, Roland. Next year, I want to go back over this again. If Tyler comes in and goes up 2%, I'm assuming the 4% is to add for their increase of what they're probably going to do on their budget, because you've already brought us up to parity. I'm assuming that if they go up when they do their budget, that'll bring us up to them right now, or at least keep us even with them. I'm assuming that's what the 4% is for those two departments. Is that close enough? You understand what I said?
I'm following you.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying.
Because
I will tell you,
when it comes around next year, I want to go through the same thing. I don't want to go 4 or 5 years at a time before we do this again.
Oh, I understand. I agree. And I think one of the big things that we need to keep in mind as we move forward from this year's budget, once we get through this one, we're still not addressing the general government employees in this one.
Well, I know, but you are some with the 4%.
Yes, sir. But
And we'll tackle that one as soon as we can.
Sure.
One department at a time. I mean,
Yes, sir.
I know the city can't afford everybody at one time. I understand that.
Right.
But at the same time, public safety is pretty tough to deal with, because it's 2/3 of our budget right now, with the fire department and the police department. So, but I do want to take care of the other departments after this. I want to look into them. But this is going to be a year-by-year deal. This can't just be now and then 5 years down the line, let the next council take care of this, because we're being derelict in our duty at that point.
I don't think anybody's questioning where we're comparing to. We did that in 2015 when I was elected mayor. The first pay increase, we compared to Tyler. That's what we've always done. That's not a new city. We've always compared to them, so that's not anything out of the
Yeah,
ordinary.
but everybody keeps going back, Mayor. Well, we need to compare to this town, or we need to compare to that town. Where do you pick? What do you pick?
We've picked Tyler every time we've done a public safety issue.
That's why I used that. But
We've always used
Ms.
that.
Ishihara said, well, we need to get another town, or this another town or something.
She was just saying that for I'm not putting words in your mouth, because Tyler doesn't have firefighter paramedics.
No.
It's just to have a comparison to see what other people do. It might bring them up even more. We don't know. So we can't
closest that we can
shoot
find on
shoot
that.
the messenger.
The closest we can find on that is the Metroplex that I've been able to find
Well,
as far as a
I'm sure
firefighter
we'll look
paramedic.
into that as we go. But Tyler is our gold standard, and I'm sure we're probably their gold standard too when they compare to who they're doing and how they pay and who they pay. That's an equal comparison. So I think we're on the right track with that, and I appreciate the diligence to put into the people that everyone deserves it. But police and fire, of course, have always been the biggest part of our budget. We have to continue to do that. But we can't go to next year's budget till we finish this year's budget. So we're not going to make any promises for next year because we don't know what next year will bring. We might be in a recession. We might be in a boom. We don't know that. So we'll get this year's budget first, and we'll move on to next year. So let's try to keep the discussion of this year if we can, and we'll discuss next year because we'll all, I'm assuming, be here next year. You had a question, Mr. Carpenter?
Where does the new engine go?
Station 5.
5? Thank you. And just to echo, I agree, a lot of the comments I liked. And yes, I love our fire and our police. There's no doubt. Some of my favorites people. But I want to make sure that we look at the other third, and knowing that we can't do it all at one time, but, you know, they're not necessarily out there in life safety situations, but by gosh, when your water's out, they're pretty important.
There is no one in our departments that we should overlook in any stretch of the form. We talk about police and fire because they're the bulk of our employee and the bulk of our expenditures and the bulk of our revenues. You know, that's where we spend it all, and that's what we do. But that's with any city. That's not just Longview. That's
Not
every
just
city.
us.
But we need to be very consistent with what we do, and we need to not be tunnel vision and just say, this is how we do it. Because I can still remember a discussion we had not too long ago when the reorganization took place. We didn't want to compare anyone else to any other city, because if we did, we fell short there, ladies and gentlemen. So let's be consistent, and let's be upfront, and let's do the best we can with the monies that we have, and make sure we're doing right by our citizens and by the employees that work for the city of Longview, because we can't do without a single one of them, not the highest paid nor the lowest paid. So, Mr. Wade.
Great job, by the way, Mr. McPhee and your staff for working on this budget. I'm just curious to know, and I know you mentioned it on here, but how the effects of COVID impacted this budget and the plans for the future.
That's sort of to be seen. I think one of the things that we have a little bit of flexibility on in our current situation is obviously those one-time revenues are meeting a gap because we're 3 years behind in sales tax collection. So it's our operations affected by COVID. Our operations are not necessarily affected by COVID. Our operations are more affected at this particular time with vacancies than they are actually due to COVID or the economic effects of that.
Council, we have many more discussions on this budget. This is just number one. We're not going to solve everything nor change everything tonight. So let's continue this discussion. I thank you for the effort. No, I don't know. I know just a little bit of how much is put into this because I get to be a part of a little bit of it. But you all put in a lot of this, a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of sweat. And every department should be commended for bringing back what we've asked them to do. And I commend you, Roland, for this budget. You're basically your first official budget, and you brought it to us in a balanced fashion. I appreciate that as well. And I appreciate the department's not having to have any increases in sewer, water, sanitation. That's also a big plus for the city of Longview. So let's continue our discussions again in August when we will reconvene on this, and I thank you for your presentation, sir. We're down to items of community interest. Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, Mayor. We had a wonderful drive this morning, compliments of East Texas Food Bank and their group of volunteers, and the people showed up. We were able to feed about 300 families this morning in the heat and with all of the other fun things that were going on. So I brought a couple of slides to show the lineup into the approach into the lanes, and just really appreciating the East Texas Food Bank for stepping up, and for all the volunteers at Gregton stepping up, and just those people are grateful for that food. So they're going to continue to do it the first and third Thursday of every month. They go from 11 to 1 or thereabouts. So that's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Snoddy.
Estate Planning 101. Guys, this is going to give you an opportunity where an expert panelist will be sharing their knowledge in property titles, wills, trusts, life insurance, real estate acquisition, and probate. Will be held at the Stamford Park Community Center on Saturday, July 30th, 2022, from 10 to 12 p.m. I'm sorry, not p.m. Yeah, 12 p.m. So if you guys are interested, look at that panelist. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. So we're pretty excited about that. Also want to congratulate, I know that they were here earlier, Mayor, but the baseball team that's going to the World Series. I think that's awesome. I do know 3 of those players on there, so I'm pretty excited.
They're representing
about
us in
those
North
guys.
Carolina, starting on August the 5th, I believe is what the date was. August the 6th. They'll be playing in for the national championship.
Mayor's
So
been modest. He's gone how many times, Mayor?
a few, but,
Yeah.
but it's great to see that
It is.
tradition continue in our youth baseball, and that shows what a great parks program we have going on here in City of Longview.
Also, last but not least, we'll be hosting a youth leadership conference this Saturday from 8 to 4. Breakfast and lunch will be provided at Parkview Baptist Church. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wade.
Yes. Longview ISD has increased the minimum wage for hourly employees to $15 per hour. As a result of this new minimum pay, as a result of this new minimum, pay rates will be adjusted district-wide for all hourly workers. District leadership said this is in response to the financial difficulties many are facing during these challenging economic times. So that's a plus. Longview Lobo Strong Wellness Program. Longview ISD also began a new health and wellness program that gives employees who participate an opportunity to earn 2 extra paid days off for the 2022-2023 school year. The Pulse app allows employees to track workouts and other healthy habits that they participate in. District leadership said the goal of the wellness program is to engage and empower our staff to strengthen and maintain their health as well as to enhance their quality of life. Convocation and vendor fair. LISD Convocation is being revamped as they are planning to have 60-plus local businesses and nonprofit participate in the Convocation Vendor Fair. This event welcomes back staff for the school year. If you would like to sign up to be a vendor or participate in the event, please contact the LISD Community Relations Department. And then this program, Summer Feeding Program. Longview ISD's Summer Feeding Program continues to be an overwhelming success. In a city where well over 50% of all children are considered economically disadvantaged, this is a tremendous resource for the families in my district, especially, yes, District 3. As of July 1st, LISD has served 1,024 students and their families by providing 9,205 breakfast meals, 13,068 lunches. The program continues for the rest of the summer until the start of school. And the Longview ISD Summer Enrichment Group camps, LISD Summer Enrichment Camp programs that took place on 6 different campuses were a huge success. The programs pulled in students from all over East Texas to participate in camps for football, basketball, volleyball, baseball, and softball. And one other, track and Junior Olympics. Speaking of LISD athletics, I want to congratulate the 4 Lobo track and field athletes who qualified for the AAU Junior Olympics. They will head to compete in Greensboro, North Carolina on July 29th. We wish you all luck and are very proud. And last but not least, Power Legacy Prep has a youth seminar which will be next week, July 26th through the 28th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. at the Stamper Resource Center at 502 South Center Street. For more information, please call 903-241-5309. Or you can email powerlegacy22@gmail.com. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Ishihara.
Nothing for me.
Ms. Gamboa.
Yes, I just wanted to congratulate Miss Abby Short on winning her Girl Scout Gold. Thank you to the Girl Scouts for inviting me to watch their bridging ceremony. Congratulations to Kaylee and Maria, Olivia, and Abby on bridging. As well as thank you to Dietrich Johnson for showing me around the Longview Housing Authority, letting me know about the programs that they have. And I wanted to remind everybody about School Supply Train with the Junior League. Mentioned it last council meeting, but that is on August 6th from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the ROC located here downtown. And if for some reason you were unable to register, please call Buckner to see if there's availability, or look up some of our local churches like New Beginnings who are also giving away school supplies. And thank you, Mr. McPhee and your staff, for all your hard work and everything you do.
Mr. Pirtle.
Nothing for me.
Mr. McPhee.
I actually do have something. On July 7th, we celebrated tenure breakfast. You've heard about the public safety honorees. I want to tell you about the ones, the other third, so to speak. We had Marcus Aragon, 5 years with GIS. We had Brittany Mills with 5 years from the animal shelter. Chris Snap, 5 years. He's in Public Works, and Robert Watson in Public Works had 5 years. Pedro Ponce had 10 years. Very excited for him. Linda Perez in Municipal Courts had 15 years. Stephen Smith, 15 years, and Scott Baggett had 25 years. And the last one is one that Dietrich Johnson, 30 years. And so I know he is everybody's thankful for Dietrich, and he didn't know I was going to do this. So there you go.
Thank you, sir. Safety City Play Day. The Parks and Rec Department will host a free public play day at Safety City from 8:30 to 11:30 on Wednesday, July 27th. As a reminder, the facility is now available to rent for your own private parties. With that, council, thank you all for your attendance. Thank you for watching. We are adjourned.